Good evening. Thanks for joining us. So my name is Tina Blank. I'm a longtime volunteer with Nevada Preservation Foundation, and I'm going to be your MC for tonight. And we're going to spend an hour hearing more about the history of the Commercial Center. I'm going to give a little bit of background on it, but mostly we're going to be hearing from our special guests tonight. We're very excited to have them. I'll introduce them in a moment. I do want to introduce our organization just briefly, Nevada Preservation Foundation. You guys will have flyers for our big upcoming Pullman History event on your table. Check those out. But we're a statewide nonprofit organization with a mission to preserve and revitalize historic buildings, communities, and places in Las Vegas and across the whole state of Nevada. And we work with a variety of different stakeholders to achieve this goal, and we use heritage tourism, like with our big Pullman History event at your flyer store, to, really educate people on the importance and benefits of historic preservation. And throughout the year, we do different programming that includes educational events like this and different other opportunities for people to deepen their understanding of Nevada's cultural legacy. And overall, by fostering this greater awareness, we hope to create more advocates for these valuable resources. So thank you for coming out tonight. Please feel free to take pictures and tag us and follow us on social media. If you want to hashtag NV Preservation, we've got our fabulous social media person back there, Jackie, who would appreciate that. And then we've got a couple of other volunteers back there. We've got Tiffany and Mitch back there, and we've got April up here. Amanda up here. April's somewhere around here. Here we go. If you guys need anything throughout the night, they're here to help you out as well. So I also want to give a special thanks to the Commercial Center for having us, but especially to the Composers Room for hosting us tonight. Can we give them a round of applause? Yeah. Awesome in here. But thank you again for having us and coordinating this. So again, tonight we're doing our kind of first ever oral history happy hour, and we're going to focus on the historic Commercial Center, which is one of Vegas' most iconic yet overlooked landmarks. So you're looking at an aerial picture of it on older photos back here behind me. In fact, I think the building we're in is that blank lot in the middle. Is that correct? Yeah, it's not even here in this photo yet. So this was the vision of developers Jerome Mack and Merv Adelson, and it's 28 acres, 15 distinct different buildings. And as you might expect, when it was first proposed, the local residents were not feeling it. But the Clark County commissioners were able to override that, and this came to be, right? So they drew inspiration from Kansas City's Country Club Southdale, Country Club Mall, which was one of the first open air shopping centers, similar to this one, back in 1923, but also from the first indoor mall, which was the Southdale Mall in Edna, Minnesota, which opened in 1956. However, the Commercial Center opened up in 1963. Over its long history, it's had things everywhere from high-end shopping to entertainment to just your average kind of shopping things as well. So we're going to talk about a few businesses that used to be here that we will or won't hear more stories about this evening. So starting with where we're sitting right here, right now. So we're in the Composers Room, but this was previously Commercial Deli. Anybody lucky enough to come to Commercial Deli and is still here? Okay, put a few hands. Awesome. So that was a New York style sandwich shop, and the Rat Pack was also known to dine there. So you're sitting where the Rat Pack used to sit, potentially right now. It's really exciting. But in November 2023, Damien Costa opened the Composers Room where we're sitting today. So we're really happy he did that, preserving a piece of Vegas history right here that we can all attend this evening. And let's see. So not only that, but we have a couple of other businesses in the center. One is actually still open. John Fish Jewelers. Anybody ever? Yeah, okay, that is still here. That is allegedly where Elvis Presley bought Priscilla Presley's ring. So obviously a pretty important place in Vegas history. We also have one of the first Chinese restaurants in the area here in Commercial Center, Pat's Chinese Kitchen. I think Dr. Green's going to touch on that a little more for us later. Also, this store, did anybody shop at Golden Venus? This was apparently a high-end fashion boutique that was here. No.
It was a spa.
It was a spa?
Like a workout.
Oh, that's nice. Okay, thank you. Did you attend?
I had gone there, yes.
Nice.
A long time ago.
We also had Trudy's Furs. Anybody?
Oh,
You have to go to Trudy's. Yeah, I know. We've got a story later, potentially, about Trudy's Furs from Debbie.
That's
And then we also had the Ice Palace. Was anybody lucky enough to go to the Ice Palace? Yeah, I see the most hands probably for that. Exciting. So the co-owner of the Riviera Hotel, Ruby Weiss, helped open that up starting in 1962, and that has undergone several transformations over the years. So originally, Ice Palace in the 70s, it was playland, skateland, and actually, I have a photo of that. Oh, and let me click through. I forgot to progress my slides here, everybody. So it's really hard to see, but thanks to UNLV special collections, these are menus from the commercial deli.
Prices were different.
Yeah, prices are scary today.
The only watch.
And then we're gonna talk about this a little bit more later, but here's some photos of the Ice Palace and Playland Skating Land. This was also the home to our first actual hockey team. So a lot of people might think Golden Knights, or maybe you remember Las Vegas Thunder. It was actually the Las Vegas Gambler. With our first team. I had a great game. They were here back from 1968 to 71. They were only semi-pro, just in the California Nevada Hockey League, but they used to skate at the Ice Palace. So sadly, it closed in 2024. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Ice Palace later. And then lastly, I want to give a shout out to Vegas Village and Von Hobels. Anybody out there? Oh, okay. So help me. Were those actually in this shopping center? They were where LVCA is.
LVAC.
LVAC.
Von Hobels was there. And is there anyone here who still doesn't know where to get a Christmas tree? Since Von Hobels left. Everybody bought their Christmas tree.
I love that.
When I moved here from Connecticut, I heard the name Von Hobels, and I thought it was a High Line, some perhaps a women's dress shop or something like that, only to find out it sold nuts and bolts and hammers.
Well, with that, let me go ahead and introduce my special presenter sitting up here with me tonight. You're going to start hearing from in a moment. Right next to me, we have Dr. Green. Dr. Michael Green is the chair of the UNLV History Department, author of several books about Nevada and Las Vegas, including Nevada, The History of the Silver State, and the co-author of Las Vegas, A Centennial History. He was a newspaper reporter before he wandered into history, and he writes Nevada's Yesterdays, which is read on KNPR by former Senator Richard Bryan. He's also the executive director of Preserve Nevada, and a board member at the Mob Museum, and we might hear a little bit more about his connection to Mob Museum later. And then we have sitting next to him Debbie Gold, who, as mentioned, is originally from Connecticut, but she moved out here on St. Patrick's Day in 1978. She had been no stranger to Vegas, decided to move out here. And she has a really fun past in a variety of fields. So she was a model. She worked at a modeling agency, worked in sales, in the hospitality business, worked at the DI, San Tropez. So if you're lucky today, she might also share some fun stories about the time she done Dead Body, or the time she met Joan Rivers or Tony Bennett. So hopefully we'll have time for that. With that, I want to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Green to tell us a little bit more about the history of the Commercial Center.
I'd rather hear what you have to say. And I know what that's. Well, Commercial Center did open in 63, and the confession's good for the soul. There are many confessions I could make tonight. One of them is that historians get things wrong. And I was being interviewed about something, and I referred to Boulevard Mall as our oldest mall. And somebody sent an email, don't you think it's really Commercial Center? And I never thought of this as a mall. I thought it was a shopping center, a different thing. And I tend to think of malls as indoors, which is wrong. But this place was built at a time when we're talking about this area being an elite area of Las Vegas. One side, you've got the Las Vegas Country Club. And while there are still a lot of elites at the Country Club, it was even more so then. And then you go across the way, and on Sahara, there was a series of office complexes being built there. And across from John Fish, for example, there were other jewelry stores. Christensen was there, others you may remember. And in fact, my first dentist was over there. So I have no happy memories going up to that area. No reason to be happy about it. But Commercial Center was close enough to downtown that there are people who thought of this as kind of a second downtown. And Mack and Adelson had some connections to it. But when it was opening up, this would be the other confessions. When it was opening up, it was somebody else who was behind it, and he ran out of money. And who came before the county commission to take it over and finish it? Well, besides Jerry Mack and Merv Adelson, you had Mack's partner, Parry Thomas. You had Adelson's partners, Irwin Molaski and Mo Dalis. So you've got the Paradise Development Company, which is building Maryland Parkway. They took over the country club and finished it. So they built Sunrise Hospital. There were other things they built along the way. And at the time, they were kind of taking it off the county's hands. I did the oral history of an attorney here named Ralph Deck. And I'm going to say there's an elephant in the room because if you can see it closely enough, I actually have an infected nose and it's swollen. And I just got an antibiotic and the doctor says I should be fine in 2 weeks. It bothers me because I booked a lot of gigs for Christmas. Call me Rudolph. And elephant is appropriate because elephants would go to Ralph to remind them of what they forgot. He had that kind of memory. And he was on the county commission at the time that Thomas and Mack and Paradise Development were going to do this. And part of the deal was that they would get the county to run the parking lot. The county would pave and maintain the parking lot. And Ralph voted against it. Even after Parry Thomas talked to him, and the vote was 4-1 as usual. Ralph was usually the one. And Ralph said, I think I made the wrong vote, but there it is. So years go by, and I'm writing a column for a now defunct publication, some of you may remember, called Las Vegas Mercury. And they were selling Commercial Center to somebody, and the developer at the time was saying, well, I think the county should maintain the parking lot. They did that in the old days. And somebody said, oh, no. So I wrote a piece saying, well, they made this deal. And I get a call from Irwin Molaski, which has me thinking, why in the world is Irwin Molaski reading the Las Vegas Mercury? And it turned out he was very offended that I had suggested it was a nice deal for them. He said, we were really taking it off their hands. And there was no deal made. They gave us this to be nice. And I finally realized Parry Thomas and Mo Dalis hadn't told Irwin Molaski what deal they were making. That's how Parry Thomas and Mo Dalis operate. So I got him to write a letter to the editor correcting me, even if I didn't think I was really positioned to be corrected, because I wanted it on the record. So Commercial Center has gone through some different owners, some different iterations. And if you think about the Boulevard, the Meadows, I think these three are the legendary malls of Las Vegas and really what Las Vegans think of. Fashion shows, a strip play, that's great. But all of them have sort of ebbed and flowed with the economy and the growth. And it's harder for Commercial Center with so much growth way out in other directions. So for those of us who are still in the heart of the city or county, it's nice to see things like this.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now I want to pivot a little bit and hear a little bit. I know you both have some information about another important business that was located here. I'm going to skip ahead here. State Street. Anybody lucky enough to eat at State Street restaurant? I see a couple hands. Great. Dr. Vick, can you tell us a little bit more about State Street?
Well, State Street was the brainchild operation of Gianni Russo. And Gianni Russo is one of those rare cases where you don't know him so much for State Street as for being the guy James Caan beat the living daylights out of in The Godfather, and then inspired a sentence I have used to students over the years when Michael Corleone said to him, "It insults my intelligence, and it makes me very angry." And when students say, well, my dog ran over the homework or something like that, it's a good line. And it was an example of this area being a place to be. Celebrities came here to a place owned by a celebrity. And if you think of famous restaurants in other communities, this kind of fit that paradigm. You know, the idea of a Hollywood restaurant where the elite came together. And you had prominent people owning it, and you knew him and have tales to tell.
I didn't know him well, but I did know of him. And so I have a very dear girlfriend And fortunately, we're still very dear friends. So she had some business dealings with Johnny Russo, and it was all the Twitter that he was very flirtatious with her. She was single, she's beautiful, and who wouldn't fall in love with her? But anyway, he had this flirtation going with her, and she was letting me in on some of this. So one evening, there were 4 women, myself, best friend, 2 other women. We had gone to a women in convention sales meeting after work. We were all in the hotel casino industry, tourism, and there was a meeting. And after that meeting, we said, well, let's go to State Street. Because not only was it a restaurant, but they had live music, and there were drinking, dancing, whatever. And we actually were celebrating the divorce of one of the 4 of us. I'd have many to celebrate, but anyway, so we are there, 4 women, and Johnny spots my dear friend, the woman that he's been flirting with for a number of months, and comes over to the table and the kiss on the cheek, and it's wonderful to see you, and this is so-and-so, 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 and so-and-so is celebrating her divorce. And he charmingly says, and he was charming and attractive, and he said, well, this deserves a bottle of champagne. And we're very receptive to a bottle of champagne. And so a bottle of champagne is sent over to our table, and the 4 of us are having a wonderful time. And at the end of our evening, drinking the champagne and probably, I don't know, had some food, we received a check for the bottle of champagne. I said to the friend, and I'm not going to tell you exactly what I said to the friend, but I am so glad that relationship hasn't gone any farther than this flirtation. And so it goes to show, when someone tells you who they are, believe them the first time.
And the irony of this is we talk about commercial deli here and the Rat Pack hanging out here. And if Frank Sinatra was in the mood, nobody could pick up a check. He picked up everything. And I think that was true of several of them. And yeah, Frank has his image, and he did some bad things. And there's an old joke that Nancy Sinatra said that Frank's grandchild was already doing something her grandpa did. And she meant singing, and then somebody said, oh no, he threw a diaper at a reporter. And this was the kind of place where celebrities could come hang out. Well, Commercial Deli, State Street. But I'd like to think Frank would have picked up the box.
I also remember, because we did come here quite often, that Dionne Warwick supposedly, I don't know this for a fact, but she supposedly was the financial backer for Johnny Russo. At the time, he lived at, I think it was one of the first high-rise. It was called Marie Antoinette, and on the corner of Harmon and Cobell. Now they've got the F1 race that goes around there. But anyway, he lived there. But I would occasionally see her sitting alone in a booth in the back, just kind of observing as he was a host. So he glad-handed and came around, visited everybody. They did have wonderful music. I don't remember the food as well, but they did have some great live music. And that was good. So, I'm trying to remember anything. Oh, and they had a tarot card. I had 2 friends, one of my girlfriends, New York Italian, and very superstitious. Vince, you know Tony. You remember Tony. Anyway, so, the 3 of us are out, and she decides there's a tarot card reader, and she has to have her cards read. So she and the other friend go to have the tarot cards read. I'm sitting alone at the table. So you're going at the table, ladies.
Oh, looks like, do we have a question back there?
Is John Russo related to the local restaurant PJ Russo that was in Vegas for so long? No.
Oh, not connected to each other so far as we know.
So if I know the PJ Russo people, it's not Bob?
I'm not going to answer. No. To my knowledge, no. I don't think you're going to find them heavily connected the way some of the other restaurants you would find around here were, and which, of course, with State Street may well have been.
And I think there's also some interesting drama that State Street is remembered for. Can you speak to that at all, Dr. Green? With the, this is apparently a man was harassing Jenny at the bar. Are you familiar with this story?
A man was harassing Mr. Russo.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, he's harassing someone at the bar.
he was harassing somebody at the bar, and Mr. Russo didn't need a bouncer. Would that be the best way to?
Yeah.
Or to put it another way, he was acting when James Conn beat him up. And I think that this led to some attention that he may not have desired necessarily. But, that is the kind of thing that used to happen. And frankly, I don't think we used to pay as much attention to him. You had local columnists in those days who were all man about town columnists. And you want to go back far as to, say, Sakowitz, Ralph Pearl, Bill Lizard in San Francisco.
Oh, no, I couldn't.
Okay. There might have been a guy named Hank. But anyway, they also didn't want to harm people in the process. So you weren't going to find big headlines unless Mr. Russo had really offended someone.
Thank you. Now, also, we talked a little bit about some of the restaurants that used to be located in here. Can you tell me a little bit more about, like, the restaurants and commercial center and kind of the diversity?
But I do remember when, I think Piero's, before Piero's was where it is. Wasn't there an original Piero's on the New Orleans Square area?
May have been.
Yeah,
Yeah.
owned by,
Freddie Glusman? Was it Glusman then? Or
no, it wasn't Freddie Glusman then, it was somebody else, and I don't remember. Does anybody know? Does anybody remember? But there was a Piero's before Freddie Glusman and moved over.
Commercial Center has a long history of diverse dining. And it's true today. And of course, they're going back in, I guess, Lotus of Siam in a different location than they were in. But they were there and got all this attention. And now, of course, have multiple locations on. But when I was growing up here, and my family moved here in 1967, you had Fong's Garden for Chinese food. And that was sort of the advanced one, which meant we weren't going. And you had the little, we'll call them greasy spoons, where you get takeout, you go home, and you pick the bag up off the seat of your car, and the grease is run. But there was a good one in here, Pat's Chinese Kitchen. A guy named Pat Jin. And it seemed to be going very well when Mr. Jin was accused, and I believe convicted, of doing some things he should not have been doing, especially with regard to underage people. And I remember that at the hearing at the time, and okay, whatever. And then years go by, and I'm driving through West Las Vegas, and somewhere near Vegas and Martin Luther King or something like that, I look, and there's like a gas station that used to be a garage, so they have some space. And on the side is a sign that says Pat's Chinese Kitchen. I go, well, he's moved. But, if you wanted to find Mexican food in Las Vegas, that might not have been so difficult. But finding other Latin foods, you're more likely to find them in here. And then one of the nice restaurants, and you'd see it as you were pulling in from Sahara, was Fisherman's Wharf. And so there were a lot of different places you could eat here and get something different from what was in the neighborhood. At least the neighborhood apart from here. And it kind of fit the area. And you were thinking about my story about Sahara the 6th, which isn't far from here, of course. And at Sahara and Six, there were two restaurants that are now no longer with us, Marie Callender's and Tony Roma's. And nobody seems to remember this part. The night Lefty Rosenthal's car was blown up. And I was proud to mention that my father was a casino dealer who was personally fired by Lefty Rosenthal. And that he had an alibi for that night. But at the time, I remember Rosenthal saying he had gone to Marie Callender's when he'd gone to Tony Roma's, and he was meeting bookie friends and some mob buddies, and everybody knew that's where they were hanging out, and not at Marie Callender's. Then across the street, you had Sizzler. Now, you go over a little farther, and this is the reason I say commercial center was sort of at the center of things. You meet interesting people in Las Vegas in ways you don't meet them elsewhere, or whatever. And in a class I took at UNLV, I met this woman, and she was introduced to me. Her name's Mary Lou Foley. Foley? Yeah, Foley. Yeah, that family. Okay. And we became friends, and in fact, Mary Lou later introduced me to the woman I married. And Mary Lou and I would go to dinner, and they lived at St. Louis and 17th. And it was a beautiful lot because you had in order Michael Callahan, who'd been the governor, Roger Foley, who'd been the federal judge, and Bill the bookie. And when Bill the bookie died, Foley and O'Callahan did his eulogies. And I always said Bill was the most honest guy on the block, and I trusted Foley and O'Callahan. But anyway, we go to the Sizzler. And every time we went there would be 20 people Mary Lou knew. And I finally said, I don't want to keep going here. Every time we go, it's a damn Democratic precinct meeting. And yet you'd find that because there were more, I don't want to say upper class or upper crust, but more prominent Las Vegans who lived in the area. So you'd see them at Commercial Center, where in later years, Commercial Center developed more of the reputation for being funky. And bless it.
Yeah, I love that. You know, I think a lot of people don't realize that. Like, growing up here, I think a lot of people were a little sketched out, for lack of a better way to say it, by the commercial centers. I think it's important to remember that, yeah, this used to be kind of like the cultural hub where people were coming and doing their business. Everybody from all walks of life, but especially the Vegas elite, was doing business dinners just right down the street, business lunches. You know, it's
or here.
Yeah, or here, right? And right at Commercial Valley. Now, I want to give Debbie a chance to maybe tell. I know they're a little bit off topic from maybe Commercial Center, but I just really enjoyed getting to chat with you, Debbie, and hearing about some of the interactions you've had with some famous celebrities while you lived in town, if you wouldn't mind sharing a story or two.
Well, and you talked about your father being at the Stardust. When I married my second husband, George Gold, he was a pit boss at the Stardust. So I have been seated at a booth with Lefty Rosenthal, whose eyes were so blank, who showed so little, and he was very nice to me. He was never offensive, but it showed very little emotion. And well, luckily I was married to someone that worked for him, but that was kind of interesting. But when I did move here, I had modeled back east, and I had been associated with the Barbizon School, which was like one of the first modeling schools. And so, but I got a job with Marshall Russo at the Desert Inn Hotel. And the Desert Inn Hotel, for me, was my favorite hotel. I felt if you could have a hotel casino that was like Connecticut, it was going to be the Desert Inn. The country club, the whole ambiance of it wasn't as gaudy, I felt, as Caesars or maybe some of the others. Anyway, and they were just lovely. I mean, I got to know both Herb Rousseau and Art Marshall. So I worked there, and you go out and you just walk around the coffee shop and you show the clothes. You tell them how much it costs, and you say, if you're interested, the shop is, where the shops were. Well, the performers that would perform at the Desert Inn would usually have a bite to eat around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They would be performing at an 8 o'clock show. And my last run was around 4 o'clock. So the coffee shop is usually pretty empty at that time. A performer would go in, sit in the back, and get served. And had a wonderful, and I was very blessed and very naive for a woman who wasn't that young. But I met everybody, and I had no compunction about taking the keynote ticket out and saying, I got a 12-year-old kid, can I have your autograph? But so I'm walking through, and it's around 4 or so, and in a booth, and I hit almost every booth. My job was to sell the product. And the product wasn't me, it was the apparel. Anyway, and I walk over to a booth, and there is Joan Rivers sitting with two young men. And she is raving about the outfit that I'm wearing. And as only Joan Rivers can do. How much of the discount do you get? I did. I got 40%. So she said, you've got to buy that outfit. That is absolutely marvelous. And we got to talking, and somehow or other, I said that I had a young son. And I wanted to know how old he was. And I said at the time he was 12 or 13 years old. And she said, I've got a daughter. Is he Jewish? And she was absolutely divine. She was very, very sweet. And my other really good story, aside from meeting so many wonderful celebrities, was my Tony Bennett story. And he was there late in the afternoon, sitting alone, had been playing tennis. Desert Inn had a marvelous tennis facility, and he didn't have his toupee on. And I didn't know. I mean, Tony Bennett's toupee was so good. Nobody, I guess I didn't really know. And he never told me personally.
Now I know.
No.
Thank
He's dead. Yeah. Anyway, so I stopped by and I did ask for his autograph, and I told him what a fan I was. And it just so happened that I was seeing his show that night. One of my friends at the casino was coming, my then 13-year-old son and I, to the show. And I said to him, I'm going to be in the audience tonight. And he asked my name. Of course, he had given me the autograph. And he asked what song I loved. And one of my favorites, and it's not a well-known song of his, it's called When Joanna Loved Me. And that night, he sang the song and said, this is for someone named Debbie, who's here with a very special young man. And my son was so thrilled.
I love that. Thank you, Debbie, for sharing.
I have to throw this in. There's a connection. We talked about the Rat Pack being there. My parents came here to get married, and they lived in LA at the time. And the night they were flying up here, there was an earthquake in Alaska. All of the flights were thrown off. So they ended up getting married March 28th, 1964. They planned to get married March 27th. I was born March 27th, 1965. And for years, well, it was almost a year, but I always said, well, I was born March 27th, and my parents got married March 28th. Leave it at that. But and they came up here, and I said, where did you stay? And they said, the Sahara. So one day I'm researching, I looked up, Tony Bennett was playing the Sahara then. However, I said, well, who did you see? Did you see any shows? And my mother said, we saw Sammy Davis Jr. at the Sands. And I said, did you see any other shows? She said, no. Once you have seen Sammy Davis Jr., you don't need to see any other shows. And I like that description.
I love that. Thank you. While we're talking about your family, Dr. Green, I believe you have a family heirloom at the Mob Museum. Is that correct? You want to tell us a little about that?
Well, my parents moved here because my mother's parents had moved here. My grandfather had been a cop almost all his life, a good 40 years. It was his career. And he hoped to get under the table security work from a cousin of ours who had connection. and he never did. But after he died, we had his stuff. And the Mob Museum, and how many of you have been to the Mob Museum? Very good. When we opened, there was a collector and I say we because I'm on the board, had rented material from it. And when it was time to renew, he said, you have to take all of it. I said, well, no, we only want this, this, and this. And he said, then you don't get any of it. So we were scrambling to refill the museum. So we gave them all of my grandfather's stuff. Or as my father, who did not have a great love for my grandfather, his father-in-law, called them, your grandfather's torture implements. So if you are on the third floor and you go into Mob 101, there's a corner about the New York Police Department. And it's my grandfather's stuff, including his sap, his brass knuckles, his claw, a photo of him giving the side eye to Mayor LaGuardia, and that sort of thing. And so I feel like I have an investment in it. And I feel invested in Las Vegas, having grown up here. But I thought of this with Commercial Center. I did not have an interesting life. I was a nerdy bookworm, and I have not changed. And this shopping center had one of the two bookstores in town I knew of. In the Boulevard Mall, they had B. Dalton Pickwick, but here it was Dana McKay. And granting that Dana McKay had a lot of business stuff, they had books. So if I wasn't being taken to the library as a kid, my parents were taking me over to Dana McKay and the other bookstore. So I spent time here reading. So everybody else has great stories, and mine is, oh, I'm reading.
Meanwhile, when me and my friends were coming here in high school, I'm looking at you back there, we were going to the Q Club to feel like we were at a bar, because there was little, you could be under 18 and go to the Q Club, and it felt like a bar, but it wasn't really a bar. Yeah, I see some other friends back there acknowledging that.
Debbie, I also wanted to ask you, I know you had said you frequented or potentially occasionally went to John Fish and Trudy's Furs. Any stories or anything you want to share about those two businesses?
No, I think some of my jewelry that was purchased for me, but I really don't purchase jewelry for myself. And now they don't purchase, if they don't get jewelry at all, or shouldn't get stocks and bonds instead. Trudy's, she did wonderful things with furs, so you could bring a fur into her and she could redesign the whole thing. I had brought out a black made from Connecticut and whatever, she just did the whole thing, made a jacket out of it, had made a muff and a hat, did wonderful things, but also it was Tiffany's cleaners that you brought your fur coats for cold storage. Every summer, your coats went into cold storage until there was a Saks Fifth Avenue, and then you brought it over to Saks. There was also Judy Morio had her modeling agency was above. They did have offices up above the periphery around here, I believe. And there was a woman named Judy. I believe Judy is still around and alive. But she had a modeling. There were a couple of small modeling agencies here, and hers was one of them.
And am I remembering a wig store?
Oh yeah,
There.
a big wig. Yeah, and the violin, it's Oscar. Why, I don't know his last name. I think the violin store is still there on New Orleans Square part. He was a very famous violinist, and he did wonderful things.
Another business I used to frequent here in high school was the Rollers Beauty School. I don't know how long that has been here. That was not an original to the location, but as a high schooler with just a high school minimum wage job, it was just definitely a lifeline to him. I heard them personally. So I want to pivot a little bit and talk a little bit about the Ice Palace. So I don't know if either of you were
lucky enough to get to attend any events there or have any background you can share? We've got a little bit of history we
No,
can.
I think my son may have gone there, but certainly I wasn't going to go there.
Well, and I referred to being a nerdy bookworm. And putting me on ice skates really would have been a disaster. But I can remember this from being a kid and hearing about the concerts. And I think they were in the Ice Palace or and Michael Kell, whose family had the Israelite, was involved in promoting those. So this is where you went to see the Grateful Dead. And the door. But to explain why I'm not the person to ask, I graduated. Any Rancho High graduates here?
Yeah.
We got Vegas. Yes. Vegas always beat us on the football field, but we beat you in the parking lot. So anyway, I'm in my senior year of Rancho, and it's in a government class, and somebody said something talking about music, and I'm not going to be the academic elitist. I like old country music. And somebody said, Mike, what do you think of Led Zeppelin? And I said, it'll never fly. And they thought I was going to be a dork and shy up. And then a few years later, to establish my dorkiness, I was telling that story to someone. I said, I said, yeah, that's what Jim Morrison said. I thought I better go find out about this. So the Doors were here. I know about that. Morrison and the Doors were here. But Santana and others performed here. And this goes to this being a locally oriented place. Because the Strip, we talked about the Rat Pack, and the Bennett, and Joan Rivers. And these are all great acts. But there's also an age group involved. The reference to Elvis going to John Fish Jewelers. Elvis performed here in 1956 when he was 21, and nobody really cared. They say he bombed, and there's no way to judge whether he bombed. He was on a bill. But he wasn't a big hit because his age group didn't go to showrooms. His age group, when he got old enough, went to showrooms to see him. Yeah. So this is where high school students, 20-somethings, went to see the entertainers, the musicians they liked and grew up with, and eventually might lose their oomph and go for older people to do old country music. But I have to throw this in just because if Elvis did buy the ring here. We were interviewing a woman who is the daughter of Milton Frel. Okay, Milton Frel built the Sahara, then the Aladdin, and had the Mint. And he had the Aladdin in 1967, and his daughter was going to law school in Southern California. And he called her and he said, you have to come home for the weekend. She said, why? Is something wrong? He said, no, nothing. Then why do I have to come home? She said, and he said, I can't tell you. What do you mean? I cannot tell you. I can just tell you you should come home for the weekend. Why? Nothing's wrong. Right, nothing's wrong. But you should come home for the weekend. Well, I can't. I have an exam. And then she paused and said, and that's how I miss Elvis's wedding.
Bummer. Womp womp. Just to give a couple more shout outs to the Ice Palace, Santana, Grateful Dead. Anybody in the audience lucky enough to see any of those bands or any bands we're missing you want to yell out?
Every weekend.
Yes. Love it.
My brother-in-law had a music store in Center. His family had the oldest music in my house, Gerheim Music.
Gerheim Music. Gerheim goes back to the 20s.
Wow.
Next to Gerheim was, well, there was a Sanchez Studios, all the high school yearbooks. And there was a restaurant called back in the
We're gonna pass the mic so we can hear you better. If you don't mind.
Yeah, my brother-in-law's family were in on the property on, what was that? When they bought the property down at Fremont? 1905, so they bought a lot down there. Their music store was, I think, on 2nd or 3rd Street, which now is part of the Fremont Hotel, which they get a substantial little check every month from that because they got the property. Yeah, the ground lease.
Then they moved out to commercial.
Yeah.
But all of the musicians in town, all of the celebrities came. I mean, you would go in and see everybody.
Jerry Vale was in there, and, Sinatra Jr., Jerry Lewis would be in, this sort of, big enough sheet music.
I mean, that, they rented the pianos, like we used to own a grand piano, concert grand piano, and it had been played by, all the different people on the street, because they would rent it, and then we rebuilt it at our house.
I love it. Thank you for sharing. That's amazing.
We have another story.
Oh, yes, please. Oh,
It's a different, it has to do with the Las Vegas Country Club. Is that cool?
yes, go for it.
And it's a stretch even calling it that. I moved to Las Vegas in 1980 after graduate school. I wanted to be a performer, and I could only find work in a hotel sales office. And so I started my career in hotel sales. I had no idea what I was doing, but faked my way through it. And 10 years later, I was the director of advertising for the Excalibur when it opened, which was very cool. And when that job ended, my boss, who was the VP of marketing for Circus Enterprises, called me and said, somebody wants to talk to you. Okay, so it was on a Sunday, and I went downtown, and it was raining, and I talked to this guy for about an hour and a half, telling him I did this, I did that, I did the other thing. He goes, I like you. Go get Debbie. And I went to Las Vegas Country Club, and I picked up Debbie Reynolds in my car. And I'm like this guy from Ohio going, what is happening here? And we went back to the hotel that she was building. It was the old paddle wheel, and before that it was the Royal Americana, those of you that remember. And we sat in the rain in my car for an hour, and I'm this far away from her talking to a woman that was like an icon to me, not like pinching myself, not believing it. And they hired me as her publicist, and I helped out during the beginning parts of her building her museum. It was the most extraordinary moment of my life, probably. And it all happened in Vegas. And when I'm telling the story, I feel like I'm lying, but I'm not. But I will tell you this. I never took my picture with her. Never. I chose not to because everybody lined up all the time, and she never complained, but it was tedious, and I didn't want to be one of those people. I wanted to be her publicist. And so I don't have a picture of her, but lots of folks that were, had been affiliated with NPR, and we did a thing on NPR with her and all kinds of stuff. But she was an example of the power of positive thinking. She had no money whatsoever, but she willed that museum to open, and it opened. Anyway, that's my story.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. Before you get into the mic,
Debbie whispered to me, don't forget Manfredi's Limelight Restaurant, Eastern and Trop.
Well, and I believe Debbie and you have a connection of a story. Debbie, do you want to share your story?
Okay, so that was Vince Manfredi who was speaking, and we've been friends for longer than we wanted to believe. So when I realized that I needed a real job, modeling wasn't going to be a real job, I actually was hired at the Desert Inn Hotel, and I was in the casino tournament department. In those days, they ran tournaments. Anyhow, Burton Cohn, who was the president or casino manager at that time, was ousted. And so they closed everything, and then you're walked out. You're walked out by security, and that's when Suma Corporation took over. So there I am in need of employment. And a friend says to me, or I'd seen an ad in the paper. In those days, there were ads in the paper. And I said to the, right, there were newspapers. I said to this friend, they're looking for a bus promotion person at a place downtown called Sassy Sally's. And so, now, it was the Desert Inn, remember, and it was elegant, and I loved it, and I loved working there, and I loved the tournaments, and I loved everything about it. So my heart was broken. But again, I needed a job. So I go down. I didn't even know where a Sassy Sally's was, but I was able to park my car at the Golden Nugget. I walked up to the Coin Castle. There were Sassy Sally's, the Coin Castle, the Golden Goose, and Glitter Gulch. Well, Mr. Manfredi was the gentleman who interviewed me for the quasi-job
It's not where you start, it's where you finish.
as the bus promotion director. But he tells the story and says, there she came up in her wrinkled linen and her silk scarf. Anyway, there was an immediate love and rapport. I never thought I would get the job. So he approved me, somebody else approved me. Mr. Pastor, who owned Sassy Sally's, owned the place, who kept saying to me, by the way, after they hired me, Miss Gold, you're never going to last. And I said, and I truly did say, I need this job, I'm going to last. But Vince, who was supposed to teach me all the things about marketing that I didn't know, left within 5 days and went over to the Debbie Reynolds, or whatever it became.
Thank you. Well, I know we're getting a little bit close to the end, so I just wanted to see if either of you had any other stories you wanted to share, or if not, maybe we can open it up and see if anyone had any questions or stories they want to share.
So, I moved here in '78 and from Indiana, so Las Vegas is really exciting, and I read the newspaper like a novel. The stuff is happening. But I can't remember the story, maybe you do. Was it in Commercial Center where the Hole in the Wall gang put a hole in the roof and robbed a jewelry store?
So it's across the street. It was Bertha's, and I think it was 4th of July, 1981 or something. And they were under surveillance, which is why they really screwed up. But you really have to be both arrogant and stupid to think you can get away with blowing a hole in the wall. But, you know, again, this is an area where these guys were living and hanging out. It was the center of town. And I just think it fits the whole idea of the action in this vicinity. But yeah, they were just across the street doing very dumb things. And these are the same. Christensen's was it. But we're talking about all kinds of businesses in the area. Did they hit Commercial Center? I'll guarantee they hit Commercial Center. They were hitting everything. And by the way, I should note, it's a difference from the 50s guys who built the Strip, that these were street rackets. It's a different kind of mob than the one we've known and many still love.
I also selfishly forgot to share this slide and wanted to ask about this business, if anyone recalls the Sound Emporium, because this is the sickest storefront I've ever seen. I've heard that you could actually press buttons on this. Can anyone verify? Does anyone remember this? Did anyone get to see it yet? Okay. We're going to bring the mic so you can share any stories you have about the Sound Emporium, because I'm obsessed with this.
I just remember it because it's next to Aaron Brothers, and Aaron Brothers is where my brother-in-law had Airheim Music. This was later.
Oh, neat. I love that. Well, thank you. So nobody else went to Sound Emporium?
I remember it. You know, being the dull kid I wasn't going, but I remember it.
Anybody else have any other questions before we wrap up for the evening?
All right. Well, I want to thank you all again so much for coming out tonight. Please don't forget to tag us if you post anything about preservation. Jackie will love you forever if you do it. I also want to say if you liked what you saw tonight or you want to attend more events of ours, please check out the flyer on your table or check us out at nevadapreservation.org. Again, we have our home and history event coming up in May, which has our home tours. We've got bus tours, walking tours, lectures, all kinds of fun stuff. It's going to be an amazing year, so please check it out. Also, April, are you around? I think April has a plug real quick that she wants to ask related to home and history.
I've been running around with the microphone, so I already have it. So some of you guys may be familiar with our Vintage Vegas home tour every year. That's where we get 8 to 10 fabulous houses. We open them up. We get to go inside. I have room for one more house on the tour this year. If you or someone you know has like a fabulous house, it could be any fabulous kind of style, please see me at I Want to Talk to You. And come and be on our tour. It's going to be Sunday, May 4th this year. And thank you again to Debbie and Dr. Green and Tina. You guys were amazing tonight.
Thank you.
Let's give them a round of applause.
Well, thanks again for having us. And if you or anyone you know has other great stories for future oral history happy hours, please hit one of us up or email our website and let us know, because we would love to do more of it. So thank you all again for coming. Thank you, Composers Room, for hosting. This was wonderful.
So you can hear the Burton Cohen. Burton Cohen once said, "My guru, I had to be my own. What I say is my doctor's I say, oh, no problem.
Okay. We are like, give me a second.